Hello and welcome to Page Turners, a weekly bookish podcast for every kind of reader. Whether you want to explore a variety of genres, tick books off your growing TBR, or simply skip the reading for book club, we've got you covered. That's Amy.
And that's Liv.
Hello! Happy New Year!
Yeah, woohoo,
Uh,
2025.
2025, baby. Welcome to the first episode of Us, Page Turners in 2025.
Welcome, welcome.
How was your Christmas, James?
Yeah, it was good. It was relaxed. It was quite low key, I think it was fair to say. Had a nice time, but I think New Year was more of a an event for us this time because we hosted a little bit of New Year. So for Christmas, we were hosted, similar to yourself. And it just has a different dynamic, doesn't it? When you get to go and just kind of contribute to the day, but you don't have to be in charge of the day. It's quite
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, no, we were hosted for two Christmases and then New Year this year. So
Ah, lovely. The
uh,
dream, the dream.
little
Um,
little tidbit into our New Year's, Amy and I exchanged pictures of our decorations, etc. And then as the clock struck 12, we sent each other cute little messages about the year ahead. Look at
we
it.
did. It was very sweet, very, very sweet. Yeah, that bloody balloon thing though, that balloon banner thing, ripped the paint off our kitchen wall.
Oh,
So we are painting the kitchen this year, but note to self for next year, don't be putting that up with sellotape because it's not a good shout.
yeah,
Not a good
all
shout.
that balloon arch thing that I sent you that was on our friend's couch. I blew up most of those balloons,
Hmm.
and they were in like a thing where you like put the ends in and you've got to do it all in
Hmm.
different ways and stuff, and the aim was to actually like tape it to like somewhere to make it like a balloon art thing, but then it just wouldn't stay up. Like Georgia and I were doing our best, and then I was like, you know what, fuck it, let's just throw it on the couch.
Yeah, that's it. The effort's already been made. Just put it on the couch. That's all you need. It's just a photo opportunity. That was it. Just a photo op.
Yeah, so what's been happening in the book world while we have been away? Oh, big news. The app which you can use to track your books, Fable, is in a bunch of fucking hot water because they
Mm.
basically did like a Spotify wrapped thing but with AI, and it was telling a bunch of users to, hey, maybe you read some white authors, okay? Oh, that is so
It was just always going to be the risk with AI, isn't it? There's so many companies and apps and things, more and more so because I noticed that like some of the big shopping apps have been using them as well to like summarize reviews and things.
all
And it's
right.
just so dangerous, isn't it? Because I think there's almost this feeling of we don't really need to moderate it because it's AI. It's not going to go wrong. Whereas, of course, this has just picked up some vocabulary, some language from who knows where, who knows what information's been plugged into it. And yeah, now they're certainly seeing the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, I mean, they've labeled some people like diversity devotees and asked some people if they're ever in a mood for a straight cis white man's perspective.
But where are they getting that from? That's the thing. Where is the AI pulling that from? It doesn't come up with it by itself. It's although we might, I think sometimes companies think it is, it's like sentient. It's not. It's pulling it from somewhere. So where is it coming from?
Where's it learned?
Yeah, I think they've just totally missed the mark. They've not done their due diligence. They've
Yeah,
offended a lot of people.
and rightly so. I mean, I would be flabbergasted, Jesus Christ.
They put out a statement. Have they said anything about what they're going to do to fix it?
They said that for the time being, they've removed part of the model that, and I think this is a direct quote, playfully roasts the reader.
Ah, okay.
And instead, it
That's
just summarizes.
worse.
I know,
That's
right? Like,
worse to say that, oh, we were just playfully roasting you by saying that sort of thing. Like,
yeah, I think
okay.
they've come out and said we're deeply sorry, we'll do better,
Okay.
etc. But yeah, no,
What a
they
shame because I was really intrigued by Fable actually. I haven't, it's not an app I've used before, but I did like, before all this kind of came to the forefront, I was looking at it for like book clubs because it does a lot of good stuff around like online book clubs and the ability to like create like a small community within for a book, you can maybe comment on certain chapters. And I thought that's a cool thing for like our community, maybe. Not
Yeah,
now, but you know,
well, I mean, our favourite Welsh girls in Pod of Smut and Wingspan, they used Fable and they've come off
yeah,
and they're now using Discord. But
fair.
I don't know, the apology just comes across as a little bit insincere, like especially with it being
Mm.
like, oh, playfully roasting, like take this fucking seriously, guys.
I think as soon as you start to, when you're in an apology, when any of these big companies do this, they almost seem to start giving reasons. Then I think you've missed the mark a little bit, don't you? That's not what people are angry about. It's what you're going to do differently, and do you understand why it could have caused offence?
All they've done is shut down the AI for the summary, right? Surely the way that it should be done is to disable the feature completely and then start sort of internal testing and like looking at, like you said, like learning where that's come from.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of books, what are you currently reading, Amy?
So I'm finishing up the Blood Witch, and I don't know. I sometimes like to have more than one book on the go because I am very much a mood reader, and the only way I can get around not just completely abandoning what I'm supposed to be reading is to have a palate cleanser kind of alongside it. So I'm also reading at the moment Trick by Natalia Jaster.
That sounds sexy.
Um, so yeah, I think so. So we're talking sort of season courts, so very much the trope of spring, summer, autumn, winter court, royalty. The male main character is the court jester. But in this world, the court jester has very high ranking, very high profile, a lot of influence within the court. He is the court jester for the spring court, and she is the princess of the autumn court. So we've got forbidden love, we've got a bit of enemies to lovers, and we've got some really pretty writing, actually. Very nice so far. Quite fun. I've heard some mixed reviews, mainly about the fact that the author, interestingly, rewrote the book fairly recently to include sex scenes. There was no spice. It was very much YA. And then she went back and she has since added a 20-page sex scene.
20 pages.
20 pages. So I'll let you know how I feel when I get to that stage, but it's very early days. I'm only like 2% in right now.
Do you think, because obviously that's different, like, do you think it's 20 pages on a Kindle or do you think it's 20 pages on a paperback?
I think it's 20 pages in a paperback
Oh,
from
that's so much sex.
But there's a lot of criticism around the fact that they feel very disjointed, like the typical story in the prose that's already there, and the sex scenes don't mesh well because they were just plopped in.
Yeah, yeah, that's not going to make a lot of sense. But please do feedback and let us know how those
Yeah,
sex scenes. We won't remember. It'll take somebody commenting, being like, "How are the sex scenes in Trick?" Which nobody will.
yeah.
So do you know what? We'll never know.
We'll never know because once we read a book, we completely just eviscerate it from our memories. It just goes,
Yep,
and we don't reference it ever again. But yeah, I'll let you know, and if I think it's worth your time, I'll recommend it. What are you currently reading? Because you just finished one of my recommendations.
I
Have
did.
you since found something else?
I started to read We Solve Murders by Richard Osman.
Nice, nice. I like switching the genre up. I feel like I get quite kind of bored of the same stuff if I read too many fantasy romance books in a row. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so the last book I read, Amid Clouds and Bones, which was your suggestion, was very quite similar to then, obviously, the Broken Blade saga,
Hmm.
whatever. That. So yeah, no, Richard Osman's We Solve Murder. It's good so far. I'm only a couple of pages in, but I love the Thursday Murder Club, so I like his writing. It's very wholesome, and it's set not well. The fake town is set not far from where Alex's mum and dad are, so it's nice to be able to
Oh,
actually picture it. Helps with the setting.
lovely. Very nice.
When this episode goes out, what will be what do we think is probably the biggest book being published this January? It's got to be Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. That's coming out tomorrow. The third in the installment of the, I want to say, Empyrean
Yeah. I think that's correct.
series. I mean, obviously, it's going to be all over social media. It's going to be everywhere.
Already is. I've already been noticing people are like counting down and getting excited about it and rereading. A lot of rereading is going on right now, the first two books.
What did I see? I saw that it's being delivered to bookstores, and a fan, a bookseller, to book up from the box, took it home with them, read it.
Oh, well, I actually saw something like that today too, but the person had saw them sitting. They were a lot less dishonest than that person. Took it to a self-checkout, thinking they might get around it that way. So took it from the box where it had been left behind, or it was on some kind of trolley thing, and it got blocked. The purchase got blocked. So they were really disappointed by that.
I
But
love
yeah,
it.
a few people suggested just stealing it.
Okay, well,
The lengths we go to.
we do not condone stealing,
No.
but Shy Bairn's getting out. But Amy, would you like to tell the people what we've read this week?
Well, I mean, this book really needs no introduction, I don't think. It's certainly more famous than we are. I feel like it should introduce us, to be honest. We're very much in its shadow. We read The Mighty Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros.
Some people will be listening to this being like, finally, this podcast
I
is
know.
for like
I
what?
know. I felt a bit like that. It was weird when we suggested reading it that we both hadn't read it.
No, basically, Amy and I had never read Fourth Wing, and we're going to talk about why and potentially should we have in 1 second. So yeah, Fourth Wing, Rebecca Yarros, the golden goose of mine and Amy's reading for the last year
Hmm.
and a bit, 2 years or whatever. Amy, why have you not read it?
Good question. It isn't because I'm not trying to be contrary. I'm not trying to not read like what's the cool book to read. That's not the reason. I think we've just had so many books like it recently, like so many big. This is the most amazing fantasy romance you will ever read. This is the next ACOTAR. This is the next whatever. And I just got a bit bogged down by it all. And for some reason, this one just slipped under the radar for me. I just didn't gravitate towards it.
Nice. Yeah, nice.
But
Um,
you?
I think I've probably not read it, probably because I love to be contrarian. But also I think because I'm on Book Talk, or sorry, because I'm on Bookstagram an awful lot, like you see it everywhere. It's hard to get excited about something that's so massively hyped.
Totally, yeah, no, right enough. And I don't know about you, but when I was reading it, I was like, I know this. I know what he calls her. I know his name. I know her name. I know the dragons. I know a little bit of the spoilers because I've seen like people with like memes of like, no, not X. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, and then it kind of loses its allure a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I also think as well, I heard quite early on that there was going to be five of them. I think this was probably around the time Iron Flame came out. And I'd already thought, well, I haven't read Fourth Wing, so there's no real point in me reading Iron Flame. And then I can always maybe start before the third one comes out or whatever, and I won't have
Mhm,
to wait as long because from what like you said, the memes, etc., I got that there was quite a few cliffhangers. And
mhm.
sometimes I find when I read a book that has a massive cliffhanger, I'm really into it, and then a year has passed or whatever has passed, and I just don't go back to that book.
Yeah, I lose. I'm terrible for that. Like I've got what was the one that came out recently? Touch of Iron, I think it
Mm,
was. And I loved the first and second book. The third book's been out now for a long time, and I haven't even picked it up. And I know that it ended on a huge cliffhanger, but I'm a bit like, meh.
You,
Uh,
you get over it, right? Like you sort of get
yeah.
over it, and then your overall feeling of the book is gone, and it's sort of like, ah,
Mhm.
okay, I've moved on. I've read other books since then. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We're not saying it's necessarily right, but it's what happens. So
it's what happens.
we should quickly talk about if there are any trigger warnings in Fourth Wing for anyone listening. There are no trigger warnings in the book, the front,
Nope.
but Amy, you have found some on the website of Rebecca Yarros, I believe.
Yep, Rebecca has got a page for each of the books that she's published, and within each page is a synopsis and then trigger warnings. So we have got war, battle, hand-to-hand combat, perilous situations, blood, intense violence, brutal injuries, death, poisoning, graphic language, and sexual activities that are shown on the page. Readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note. So,
Perfect. Yeah, we love
there.
we love an author that is out and out about their trigger warnings, so that's great. Even sometimes I know that trigger warnings are sometimes somewhat spoilery, I suppose.
Hmm.
But I think sometimes it's important, even when they're not trigger warnings that are, graphic content, that sort of thing, things that people wouldn't normally necessarily associate with something needing to be a trigger warning, like war, for example.
Mhm.
I sort of felt myself go, huh, war. I was like, but no, that could be
No,
triggering for
yeah.
someone, you know.
For
So
some people it could be. You're totally right. Yeah, yeah. Do we prefer it to be on the website? Do we prefer it to be in the book? I don't mind as long as there is a sort of reference to it in the book somewhere so that you can tell readers to go to the website to read
yeah,
a list of trigger warnings.
that's important. I feel
Um,
like, yeah, if you're
yeah,
gonna write down trigger warnings, just put them in the book. Like, there's
yeah,
there's so many pages of like that stuff of like the publishing, the blurb, everything like that. And sometimes there's just a blank page in real
yeah,
books.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, that little casual blank page. You're right. Yeah,
Put it in there. Put it there.
yeah. And if it's a spoiler, people will just skip past it. You'll see trigger warnings as a title and go, yeah, I don't want to read these because I don't want anything to be given away.
Yeah, and I
Fair
mean,
enough.
as long as someone doesn't say in the trigger warnings, death of a close friend, death of a close female friend, you know, like I feel like that's probably a bit more spoilery than
Yeah,
death.
yeah, yeah. Death of a family member, brackets, not quite. Yeah, we don't want that. So,
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, like that wasn't a twist we didn't all see coming. Uh,
no.
anyway,
Oh.
speaking of twists we didn't all see coming, the speedy summary.
Right, hang on. Let me
Uh,
get my
while Amy,
timer up.
while Amy's getting the timer up, I will already apologize. This is going to be probably the longest speedy summary that we've ever done because so much happens in this book, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So,
Do
all
you
right.
want to predict how long this is going to take you? If you don't think it's going to take you a minute, what do you reckon?
I think it's going to take me 2.5 minutes.
2.5. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Right.
Violet Sorrengail is the daughter of a respected war general who is insisting she trains as a rider. Elite warriors who ride dragons into battle instead of following in her dead father's footsteps and becoming a scribe. Her sister Mira is already a battle-hardened rider and gifts her some dragon scale armor to keep her safe. Violet's brother Brennan was also a rider, although he's definitely super dead. At the top, before crossing the perilous parapet, she meets Xaden, the bad boy of the Riders, and the formal rebellion leader's son. They take an instant dislike to each other. Violet and her new friend Rhiannon survive the parapet by sharing boots, and Vi finds her sort of childhood crush, sort of bestie older boy, Dane, and gets put into his squad for protection, which then conveniently gets moved under the command of bad boy wing leader Xaden. Welcome to Fourth Wing. Classes begin, and she's great at the strategy/geography ones because of all of the reading she's done. She's not like other girls. During the physical challenges, Violet poisons her opponents before they fight so she has an advantage. One night, while gathering poison, she sees Bad Boy Xaden and other marked ones, kids of dead rebels, gathered in groups even though they're not allowed to, but he's just helping them survive. He sees her, they flirt, and she keeps quiet about the secret because he's not at all like she first thought. They have to run an obstacle course to then be allowed to bond with a dragon, and Violet is just too short for one bit, so she uses her daggers, and another leader thinks it's cheating, but Xaden allows it because of a technicality that Violet knows in the handbook. She's so smart. They walk in the fields, getting a look at dragons, and some seem interested, especially a smaller golden one. The next event is called the Threshing, where you get to then go and bond with a dragon and let it choose you or something. Some bullies go after the small golden one to kill it because it's weak, but Violet protects it. This leads not only the golden one to bond with her, but the largest dragon ever, and the only other black dragon is with a big general. There's some uproar and talk about unfairness with her having two dragons, but it's allowed because the dragons say so. Turns out her large dragon, Tarn, and Xaden's are mates, so there's a chance if either of them dies, the other does too. So they're bonded, and when the dragons fuck, they get horny, I guess. Dane turns out to be a big wetty loser, but he's got a power that lets him see your memories if he touches you. And no surprise to anyone, Xaden and Violet bang a bit. She starts to develop feelings, but he's emotionally guarded, and she tells him that if he's not going to admit it, he has feelings too, they shouldn't do this. During Capture the Flag or whatever, Violet kills the bully who's been harassing her, and she's upset about it. Cue more sex, where Violet's lightning powers smash some windows. They get interrupted in their mammoth session due to a drill that's also their final test. Xaden takes her and her squad to a place where some Griffin riders, the supposed bad guys, show up, and betrayal! Violet learns Xaden and the other marked have been helping them arm themselves against yet another enemy, the Vernon. Turns out there's another betrayal, and the squad has been sent there to die by the king and the general, maybe? Dane's involved somehow because of his touchy magic powers. Some Vernon attack a village, and they help the Griffin Riders and the town defeat them at the cost of some of the squad and Violet and the Golden Dragon's health. Violet wakes up in a semi-rebuilt rebel land that I don't remember the name of, and her and Xaden just aren't the same anymore. She loves him, but she can't trust him. Oh, and of course, her brother Brennan is alive and a part of the resistance. The end.
Excellent. 3 minutes, 48 seconds.
Oh, God. Yep.
But it was a big book and there was a lot going on.
And I didn't even like there. There's definitely some more nuances in there that I think
Hmm.
I failed to talk about, but Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Hmm.
where would you like to start?
Where do you start with this? I
Um,
mean, let's just go straight into it. What were your kind of initial, because you were a bit different from me. You took a while to get into this one. I
yeah.
read about 50% and then stopped and then had to kind of like build up my enthusiasm to finish it, to be honest. You were slightly different in that you took a while to actually start.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was on maybe about like the first chapter for a few days. I just couldn't be asked with it.
Why? What was it about? What was it?
I think that first chapter's so I'm just so small and, oh. But then I think I got through it a little bit because turns out she's not really saying that she's small. It's the writing that's telling us that she's small, right? I think at
Hmm.
first I was blaming the character of Violet for a lot more for what actually Rebecca Yarros is doing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know how tall Rebecca Yarros is.
Mm.
Because I don't know how many times you got told that Violet was the smallest person ever in the whole world, but Jesus Christ.
We
Um,
could put it in our pocket.
yeah, I know there's nothing wrong with being short, but you would think that this was the manifesto for short people can do things too.
Oh, I know, and for her biggest sort of barrier in life to be her height, it's like, is that realistic, do we think? Is that going to hold her back from doing all these things that she's trying to do? I mean, she couldn't reach something at one point during the gauntlet scene. She couldn't actually reach
Um,
to go the way she was meant to go.
do I believe that this is good chronic illness rep? I,
I've heard from some people that they think it is, but
yeah,
again,
but
I don't know.
I've heard it's always good to be in books, right? To have chronic illness in books and have them as the heroine or the hero, whatever. I worry that sometimes in a fantasy setting, what is being championed is the pushing through it and the doing things even though you shouldn't, even though it
Mm,
hurt you, and that sort of comes across as an example of like do the thing, you should push yourself and do the thing, which I feel is perhaps a little
yeah,
bit
like
of
if you want
toxic
to, you can,
positivity.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's also a bit of
Yeah.
toxic positivity in the sense that like
Mm,
you it's that, and I'm trying to walk around this quite sensitively because I do not have a chronic illness, but I think it sort of sometimes comes across as like, yes, you have a chronic illness, but you can't. That doesn't mean you can't do the things that normal people do, or like people that don't have a chronic illness can do. And I completely 100% get that. But sometimes there's also a lot to be said for, yes, you can't do the things that people, some of the things, not everything someone with a chronic illness has, but that's okay.
hmm. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
sometimes, and I felt in this that there was not, Violet pushes herself, and that's even in the books, they're like, you shouldn't be doing this, like, come on, and everything. But even she doesn't, she continues to push herself, and that gives a almost a thing of like, you'll be fine as long as you push yourself, sort of,
Yeah, I
which,
think it's kind of like the whole like the idea of like the medical and social model. Like, the medical model, you need to change to suit society or but we know now as a society that we need to make allowances to accommodate other people and their needs. But I guess how do you do that in fantasy? How do you? and still have peril and still have high stakes and still keep things action packed. I didn't mind it. I mean, I don't have a chronic illness either, so it's difficult for me to say if it was a good example of the representation. But I did find it a little bit cheap that it was never named. It was just, oh, her mum had a fever when she was a baby, and therefore she's got quite, she's got bad joints and she's not, she breaks her bones easily. And
Mm.
okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
I, I get what you're saying as well, but I wonder whether it isn't named because it's almost like it can encompass an awful lot of different chronic diseases and that
Yeah,
allows for more representation, or is it that in a fantasy setting we're expecting some sort of different name for it and that does it a disservice?
yeah.
I'm not.
I think it would. I think it would be offensive if it was like some kind of fantasy named condition. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying. And yeah, I think it was nice that there was ways around it for her, that she had to think differently about the tasks and she had to draw upon her other strengths. I'm glad that she did eventually sort of do what she could with her physical abilities, because I was worried it was going to be like, you don't have to do it physically. You're so smart. You're the most book smart person in the whole of Fourth Wing. It didn't go that way. I thought it might, but it didn't. So I do give her some kudos for that, because she could have just been like, she's a scribe and that's her only strength. Whereas was quite faceted actually. She had quite a lot going on in her personality.
Yeah, classic tropes though of like I wrote in the notes that I had here, she's not like other girls, she can read.
She can read. Yeah, she can read. She can see the situation in different ways. No one else can. No one else thinks about doing things on the parapet the way she does.
Oh, that's it. I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie. This is I have so many notes in chapter one alone. When they talk about pale skin, pale eyes, pale hair, I was like, oh, here we go. Of
Oh
course.
no, she's got the best of both worlds. She's got dark hair going into a silver ombre naturally. So,
And then when they say what curves I do have should be muscle, my treacherous body makes me embarrassingly vulnerable. It's
yeah.
I think maybe that's the reason why chapter one took so long for me to like get through.
It's trope-tastic, and we knew, and you said it rightly in your summary, we knew she was going to bond with the most powerful dragon. We knew she was going to have the most ridiculous signet power. Like that was just going to be jaw-droppingly incredible. I thought she might have lots, to be fair. Maybe she will. Maybe in the second book she'll have another 10 or whatever it is. I mean, we knew what we were getting and we got it. We got that total stereotype again.
After I'd gotten past chapter one, do you know what? Actually, I'm kind of involved in this. Cool, okay, I'm gonna get through, and I read it very quickly. What I will say is, yeah, it really lends itself to tropetopia is what I'm gonna call it.
Love it.
But I got really annoyed by it. Normally, I'm like, tropes are tropes for a reason, and I'm fair enough. Maybe I'm not in the mood for a tropey trope book, but actually, I'd like to visit Tropetopia right now, and this is the book for it. However, if you're gonna do tropes, fucking do tropes. Don't try and convince me. Don't mention the big black dragon. Oh, he's not gonna bond with anyone, and then I'm like, oh, okay, right, but he's still gonna. And then you mention the golden dragon. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay, so is she gonna get a dragon that's small, a bit smaller, like she is? Like that's quite
Yes.
interesting. Then for them both to bond with her.
I know. Do you think Rebecca Yarros had initially wanted to do that? Because it felt like Andarna, the little golden dragon, was kind of meant to I guess it was supposed to be like a parallel and mirror Violet, and that she's small and the dragon's small. So maybe they won't be able to do things the way that other riders and dragons do it, but they're still going to be badass. And then it was like, oh no, but actually, I also want her to have the most powerful dragon ever. So
Well, that
tears up.
yeah, and I mean, I feel like there's part of that even with Ardana because what can Ardana do? She can stop time. Like
Stop time.
off. Sorry.
I hated that Tairn was, is it scale? I should probably know how to pronounce this because I'm pretty sure some of it is like meant to be Gaelic, but she is like his mate. He's her mate, sorry. And I was like, of course he is. Of course he is. Of course she is with the dragon that's mated to Zayden's dragon. Of course.
Yeah, that's it. I enjoyed the book,
Hmm.
but what I would say is it's nothing special. It's your basic overdone. stock male female horny fantasy.
It's been done loads of times in loads of different ways. You could have subbed out a war college for a school, magic school. You could have subbed it out for like the stereotypical trial that we've read about many times. Dragons were meant to be a little added extra, and in some ways they were. I quite enjoyed the threshing. I didn't understand it, but I quite liked it. I thought I'm interested to see how these dragons are going to be sort of in charge, and they take the dragons sort of word as law, but it just wasn't done well enough. It wasn't done with enough detail for me to care by the end. And I just felt a bit like, oh, the dragons are just there to make everything perfect for you. You get two dragons, magical power dragon one, and really strong rare dragon two. Of course you do.
You mentioned the Gaelic thing.
Mm.
How do we feel about that?
Don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, well, I've seen different things. People saying it's like cultural appropriation. I feel like you can't do that to Rebecca Yarros and not do it to bigger authors that have done it. Lots of authors have done it. We've got, Sarah J. Maas has used the map of the United Kingdom and flipped it. Reese is a Welsh name. Like I feel like you cannot do it to one and not do it to another just because this one is less popular perhaps than that one. So and also fantasy, a lot of fantasy names of places and characters are rooted in ancient languages, other cultural languages too. I get it. I get why people have got an issue with it sometimes, but I do think it's unfair to only criticize one author for it when lots of authors do it,
Yeah, yeah.
rightly or wrongly.
I think from what I've gathered, it's not cultural appropriation's an interesting one when the Gaelic culture not necessarily it's not generally a culture that we see being monopolized or
No, totally.
beaten down or
No.
anything like that. I think what I've seen is that people are upset about it purely because she's not actually bothered to learn it or like not actually bothered to go to
Yes.
someone that is a Gaelic speaker or whatever and the pronunciations are wrong and it's like if
I
you did
don't know if it's Gaelic or Gaelic. I would need to know. It's one or the other. I don't know. I would need to see. That's the thing. We don't know.
I think
So
I think it's
is it
Gal
Scottish or is it Irish?
I think it's Scottish Gaelic.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm Scottish and I don't know. So it's not it's spoken by a lot of people north of Scotland and the kind of island communities of Scotland still. It's very much it's not a dead language. It's still very much used. But yeah, I think that's the argument. She hasn't done her research. And if you're going to pay homage to these things or use them for inspiration, then you should do your research, do your homework, speak to someone, learn how to pronounce it, because apparently it wasn't pronounced correctly in the audiobook.
Yes,
Um,
that's what I've
ugh.
got. So like things like the name of the war college, yeah, mispronouncing the names of the dragons, they're just off the mark. And the
Mhm.
authors should be more careful when using a language in their books. Like you said, just learn a bit of it. Like
Yeah.
you clearly have to do extensive research as an author in any type of thing. Just get
Yeah.
the amount of pronunciation guides are mad. Just get it done, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I think she should be drawn across the coals because of it? I mean, not overly condemned. Do I think when it's a different culture that it should be? Yes. Yeah, but I find it's tough, right? Because obviously, not often is a primarily white culture accused of misappropriation.
Mm.
So it's quite. But as I know that the Scots were seemingly oppressed by the English, but I don't think I don't think it applies as heavily as it does to other cultures.
I don't think it applies as heavily, but I think there will be people in the Gaelic community who are very protective of the language,
Yes,
to be
absolutely.
fair.
And they have every right.
Maybe not everybody in Scotland, but there will be people who it means an awful great deal to.
Yes.
And I have watched videos and saw posts from people who do speak Gaelic as perhaps their first language, because there are still people in Scotland
Yeah.
who do have a problem with it. So even from the fact that there are people who've already expressed their displeasure about it, then you do need to respect that there are some people it has affected and it has upset. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe something for Rebecca to think about. And I don't know if maybe she did, perhaps in the next books, maybe think about that more. I can't comment because I haven't read them.
Yeah, no, me either. So yeah, okay. That's I feel I feel like we managed to get around that quite sensitively, but
I hope
um
so. You can check it in the edit, and if it's not, you can do
we
your magic on that.
whoever's listening to this thinking we've got it completely wrong, let us know. We're more than happy to be told we're wrong. Please let us know. What were your expectations? Because when we have a book hyped, and I wouldn't say this sort of counts in our TikTok made me read it type thing. It has been helped along by TikTok, but I do think this book is massive even without TikTok's help. So, what were your sort of expectations going in?
When I first heard about the book, and it was quite a while before it was actually published, I had very high expectations about it because I really was excited for the dragon element. Once it had been published and more people were talking about it and we were getting tropes, and I hate when books are broken into tropes, but that's such a fad at the moment where there's the front cover and then there's a little arrows all around about it
Yeah,
and it tells you what the tropes are. As soon as I read, it was like there's a shadow daddy in it, it's enemies to lovers. I was a bit like, oh, how many times have we read a book like this? So then my expectations went down, I
right.
think, from there. But reading it, I actually felt like at the start I was quite into it. I enjoyed the first half of it quite a bit. I like the idea of the different trials, and the war college setting was new for me, and I quite liked the dragons. And then it kind of lost its once she kind of was chosen by both dragons, that's when I had my eyes were rolling right out my head at that point, and my expectations went down again. But yeah, they were high at the very beginning when I first heard about it. And then after that, once I found more people had read it, that's when they kind of were a bit middly. What about you?
Yeah, so I think the reason, maybe another reason why it took me so long to get into it is because for such rave reviews, for it to be as highly rated as it is, for it to be as, you know, obsessively talked about as people's like, oh my God, this is my favorite book ever. I was expecting, especially with War College, especially with a war brewing, I was expecting Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And we got nowhere near that
No.
writing, nuance, character development. I think when I actually started to realize that it was more what you were saying, like a shadow daddy and like a romantasy setting and everything. I think what I'm about to say is fair. I don't know. I also don't care. Where the romance makes the plot take a back seat, I
Yes.
sort of just was able to get through it a lot quicker because I had the expectation of, oh, this is literally, this is nothing. This is not going to be your favorite book, Liv, but it is going to be a book that you enjoy while you're reading it, but it will leave nothing with you afterwards.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I do find it mad that for people who read fantasy, and I'm not talking about everyone here who's ever read Fourth Wing. I am talking about people who have been in the fantasy community, who love fantasy books, and were reading this being like, oh my God, like dragons, crazy. There are so many books with dragons in them. I don't understand how this is not a USP specifically for this book. We'll talk about other dragon books that I think people should read towards the end. Maybe it's the mix of like dragons and romantasy.
I think sometimes Romantasy does a good job of acting almost like a gateway for people who maybe wouldn't pick up a high fantasy book or would find straight fantasy a bit intimidating. And this gives you the chance to experience the typical sort of tropes of fantasy, but you've still got your romantasy elements that are familiar and comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I'm still going to, it's only a couple of chapters and then we'll get back to the romance. So I don't have to get bogged down too much in the political kind of idea of court intrigue and that sort of thing. That's why I think a few people really don't like Cruel Prince, because Cruel Prince leans more fantasy, doesn't it? And we love it. It's one of our collectively favourite books. I think that's fair to say. But fantasy is where romance does take a back seat, whereas with these kind of books, romance is very much at the forefront and fantasy comes second. Not my favourite way of doing it, but a
No,
lot of people's.
mentioned a good gateway to fantasy, and I think it's probably a good time for us to have a look at some reviews.
Oh, okay, I'm excited.
So let's start with the 5 stars. It's strange with the 5 star and the 1 stars. Like obviously we're looking at two ends of the spectrum here, but they are essentially just arguing the opposite point of each other. But I do have that people thought it was quite fun, quite addictive, easy to read, and thus a good gateway to fantasy. Exactly what you
Okay.
just said with Romantasy. And I think I would probably agree with that. Like it's probably if you've never read a fantasy book but you read romance and you like that sort of fun, sexy, tense, but not all that tense because they basically bang so quickly and it's unbelievable. If you like that, then you will like this, and hopefully that will get you into more fantasy books.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I agree. I thought it was fun. I can see why people who maybe have read some of the more the Fae books and enjoyed it, the really like romance heavy ones, and now they want something a bit different, but they don't want to stray too far away from the romance. I can see why it would appeal to people.
Yeah, it's this is an interesting one, which I think we're going to have to talk about. Apparently, a lot of the reviews I read, it subverts tired tropes.
Ooh, okay. I don't agree with that, but
No,
okay.
100%. I do not agree. That is,
No.
yeah. Well, let's just discuss the tropes here. Dead brother is alive and joins the rebellion. It's not a particularly catchy trope to just say straight away, but fuck me, is it used again and again and again? Any sort of dead sibling or dead family member or dead person that you love who then find out is part of the rebellion or part of the other side, fuck off. Speaking of the
Yeah.
rebellion, you've got rebellions are actually the good guys, and the people you considered society the good guys are the bad guys. Shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Please shout if you have any other ones, Amy. Oh, yeah. Chosen Girl is so clumsy and so silly and just like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. She's different, and her way of being
Mm-hmm.
so clever. And oh, look, she's the chosen one. And because she's so different, she gets to have two dragons. And yeah,
Yeah.
she's not like the same as all these brutes in the Rider Academy, so therefore she's commended for it.
Yeah. Morally grey main character. Oh, he's hard to read and he's aloof and he's actually a bit of a dick. Oh no, he's not because he's got a difficult past. He was a foster child. He's had a hard time of it. We've had that a million times as well.
He punishes himself to keep others safe, like discount Resand.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. What was it? He had all the scars, and every scar represented a child that he had taken responsibility for should they rebel. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shadows. We've had how many shadows have we shadow daddies do we have nowadays?
yep.
Yeah.
Lightning power. That's basically just Red Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Most powerful of all powers as well. Really
yeah,
strong
I mean,
power. Yeah.
I'm sure we could sit here and go through many more, but this I unequivocally disagree that this subverts tired tropes.
Oh no, I totally agree with you in that respect. No, it doesn't. So don't read it thinking you're going to get something you haven't read a million times before.
Yeah. And look, if you've not read fantasy before, or if you've not read romantasy, then sure, you're going to get tropes that are, ooh, new, fresh, and exciting. But if
Hmm.
this is something that you're reading in and amongst loads of different subgenres of fantasy, you're not going to get anything new. You might
No.
get put to you. I think the best I can give it is you might get it put to you in a different way, or oh, it might sneak up on you a little bit, but it's there. And the last one, uniquely written.
Uniquely written. Is that for five or one?
That's for 5. That's for 5.
Okay. Uniquely written. Unique's an interesting word to describe writing.
Do you,
Unique.
do you think that unique? I can't mean bad because it's a 5 star, but it should.
Uniquely.
How did you
What's unique about it?
yeah, how did you find the writing, Ames?
I found it jarring. I found the sprinkling in of some modern vernacular very off-putting. The part at the start, I think it's maybe only a couple pages in, where she uses for the win. I was like, oh
Wow,
no.
I completely moved past that. The use of the word mom. MOM in a fantasy setting, and
Yes.
it completely took me out. So
Yes, a lot of it did. Yeah, yeah.
when she's gone, I got over it because we didn't have to have mom anymore. But fuck me, yeah, it was
Such an easy fix too, isn't it, mother? Just say something a bit more, you
literally
know.
anything. I think anything other than maybe mom, and then what I call my mum, because mum
Hmm.
is so regionally specific. Mum, I might have been a bit. No, I think I would probably would have been okay with mum, but yeah, mother, like you said, and also she's a war general. She's like strict or whatever. Surely you would expect more formal communication between the two of them.
I would have thought mother would have worked well for her. I'd have thought she would have called her mother because they don't have a very informal relationship at all. So that was also quite jarring. There was a lot of times when there was the use of modern language scattered through there that just took me right out of it.
Yeah, it also made them seem like children.
Was very, very young. They read young to me. The dialogue was young. The interaction between the characters felt YA, but then there were sex scenes. It was couldn't really,
Literally
yeah.
written YA book with sex. I completely agree.
Mm.
I'm going to move on to the one stars because I think you and
Oh,
I agree quite vehemently with a lot of these. All
okay.
right, the first one, the big one, the one that's pretty fucking cutting. Bad exposition and foundation bad writing.
Ooh, ouch. Exposition, I 100% agree with.
Yeah, it's just shoved in there. It's shoved in conversation. It's shoved in
Hmm.
big fucking info dump paragraphs.
Yep.
It's it's not even the little chapters that they have at the beginning, the things at the beginning, which are like
Oh, yeah, written by her brother, the kind of help the book. Was it by her brother or was it by her sister? But someone had given her like a diary of advice.
yeah, but then also like sometimes, yeah, oh God, the way I'd heard about that was that it was used for historical text, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, lovely. I love that in a fantasy. That generally gives you an element of higher or epic fantasy of this idea of this larger world. There was none of that. The,
No, no.
the idea of the larger world was used so sparingly. Yeah, oh yeah, we're in war with the Vernon. Who are the Vernon?
I know. Why would we care who they are? Because we don't know anything about them.
Yeah, we're so focused on the internal rebellion
Hmm.
with like Zayden's dad or whatever that we also get nothing. We don't know why they're rebelling.
No, it just felt very high school in that way. It just felt like we weren't getting enough. And the politics of the day to day of the school. And it's a shame because I think Rebecca was trying to make it a lot more grown up with the daily roll call of the dead. And I think she was really trying to do that, but it just didn't hit for me. The writing was too juvenile.
It was so young, and like you said, it's YA has the ability to be darker, to have darker themes,
Mm.
but with adult or into new adult, you really have to step up that level of, like you said, language, conversations, and that exposition has to be put in there so you know everybody's motivation, you understand everything. Because with YA, you sort of take a bit more on faith. People or younger MCs sort of have these like that flightiness that lets them get away with more rasher decisions or
Yeah,
decisions that
yeah.
they've not thought about a bit more. These people,
No, and no, and don't get me wrong, and I know we've talked about this before, we have read younger MCs who we both love, and they don't make adult decisions and they don't necessarily do what you would do, but they're young and you can relate to that because you were young. So you appreciate that they maybe don't have all the answers. Violet's 20, and I'm assuming that Zayden, if he's older than her, is he in fourth year potentially or something like that? So he'll be about 23, 24.
yeah,
It doesn't read like that to me. It's not a relationship between a 20-year-old and a 24-year-old.
I'd forgotten that they weren't like 18.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote it down today doing my notes because I wanted to mention it because I thought this conversation would come up and I thought, what age is she? Because I didn't remember by the end of the book because she didn't read like someone in her 20s.
Yeah, I mean it's mentioned once at the beginning because on their 20th year they go into the different schools or whatever. And then it's
Yep.
mentioned again at the end when they say that when she's injured, she slept through her 21st birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
We know, even at 20 or 21, that we were not the most dynamic of individuals, but we weren't fucking children.
No. And if you want to do a new adult and you want to appeal to a more adult audience, then you need to think about your themes and your writing style and the dialogue between the characters because we need to care. And I just did not care about these characters at all.
I would say the only reason they're 20 and not 18 is because it feels less weird having more sex with a
This,
couple of 20-year-olds, especially when she would be 18 and she would be newly 18 and he would be older. I think that's the
yeah.
only reason we have these elevated ages is for sex.
And I think you're totally right. And I think a lot of the time, maybe not, and I'm not saying it's necessarily the case here, but I do think authors do know that sex sells.
Yeah.
And spicy books are going to get talked about and picked up on social media, and people are going to read them. And it's like, well, I have to get some sort of sex scene in here. So, what age can they be? And it's almost if they work backwards. Like, I want to have spice. So, what do I have to change about the characters and the book to get spice to go in there without it getting weird? And that's not how it should be. We've talked about this before that should only be used, sex scenes should be used to further the plot, deepen the character connection, not just sell a book.
None of these one-star reviews are very flattering, as we expect one-star reviews not to be. No interesting characters and no substance.
No substance is so harsh. No interesting characters. I've got a list of the characters in front of me right now.
Specifically, I think as well was meant like they didn't care about Violet, they didn't care about Xaden, they didn't care about any of the side characters, and so when Liam dies,
Mm-hmm.
it's a real big like tear-jerking moment in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Most people on the one-star side just didn't give a shit.
Did you care when Liam died?
Nah, I don't think we had enough from him. He was so basically when Xaden and Thingy get all sexy, sexy, he basically assigns Liam to be her bodyguard because if first of all, it's like, oh no, well, if you die, I die. But then it's also because he wants to keep her safe. And you just don't get a lot from Liam. She tries to build him up, but
Yeah, she does try. She tried to build a relationship between them that's quite platonic and sweet, but mm, I'm trying really hard here. I'm trying really hard to be positive. Uh, mm, no, I just feel like they were caricatures. Like Jack in particular was just so evil for nothing. Like, yeah, pushing people off the parapet and like he's like a pantomime villain.
we love that. We love saying that about people who
We
are just
do, but it's
100%
true.
evil. Like, yeah, he had no other like you didn't even know why he was evil. Like
No, what was his motivation for being so horrible to people?
it would have made sense if he, I don't know, you heard about like I don't know, some sort of he's here or he's dead, that sort of thing, like the marked ones, like the rebel kids. The reason they're there is because Zayden agreed that they would all go to the war
Mm.
college.
Or even if he had a point to prove, like Violet, like
Yeah,
he's got big shoes to fill. He's maybe got a sibling or a parent or someone that's given him a tough time and he's got to live up to that.
100%. I completely agree. It's that or nothing for him, right? It's death or glory.
Yeah.
Or he's scared, but you get nothing. He is just 100% there for plot.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Rhiannon and the fact that I thought it was fairly, is it, am I right? Is it virtue signaling? Oh no, it's queer baiting, where essentially she's with both girls and guys.
She's in there for the rep. She's in there for the rep.
Yeah, there was just not
Mm,
enough about her for her to be a
nah.
substantial character.
Nah. I felt a bit like a tick box exercise, Rhiannon, to be honest. You had to have a friend. And then the friend had some sort of representation that we didn't have yet.
Well, yeah, because I think I'm not sure. I've read that Rhiannon's black.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm not sure if there's any initial description that I've obviously skipped over, but I don't.
She's in it very early on, isn't she? She's in it from very near the start.
Yep.
Rhiannon. Mention of what she looks like. We've got Dylan with blonde hair. I don't think so.
I read a few things about people saying that, so the black character has no substance and she's also gay, and so like she's basically tick boxing every single character.
Hmm.
But I don't know for sure. Like I said, I didn't think I'd read any particular description about her.
No, I can't find it. So I don't think so. I can see that Dylan's blonde. I don't feel like anyone was that well described though. Like Xaden was obviously described in detail because he was just so amazingly gorgeous, and Violet was also described in some detail for the same reason. But the others, I didn't really picture anybody in my head when I was reading them.
No. Did you feel like Xaden was over described? Like he's so objectified all the way through that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust him,
Mm-hmm.
but man, he's so hot. Like
Yep.
it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It got a bit much for me.
A bit uncomfy that if we had a potential male character describing a female like that all the way through it, would it be a bit uncomfortable to read? I think it could be. It's overkill. I get what she's trying to do. She's trying to emphasize just how hot he is, but what else is there about him? Because should we just be reading about him because he's hot? Is there anything more to him that we can talk about?
Until you find out that he looks after the younger kids coming in, that's his only sort of thing, other than how hot and
Mhm.
how bantery he is.
Is he though? Is his banter good? Like, we'll get to the ick in a minute, but
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I think I already know what that is. And the very last one that I picked up, which I would really love to talk to you about, is that this book is not a true enemies to lovers.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I
There,
agree with that.
there is no way they're enemies at the beginning.
No, no. To be fair, I have found it very difficult to find what I would consider true enemies to lovers. But it annoys me that people use that term when it's just throw it around willy-nilly, because you're totally right. They don't hate each other. They are not enemies at the start at all.
If there was any kind of rivalry between them, she'll have known about it and they'll have met each other before.
Mhm.
Like,
Rivals is fine. Rivals is fine. Just call it rivals to lovers. That's okay. We can deal with that. It annoyed me how much she kept trying to convince us that he was going to kill her. And I was like, he's not going to kill her. I don't think for 1 minute that this character is going to kill this other character. So this is a waste of time.
I wouldn't even consider them rivals to lovers. They're not on the same playing field. He's 3 years ahead of
No,
her. He's not in any way thinking like, oh, I've got to be good at this or else Violet's gonna show me up or whatever. Like,
no. Why would he? He's well established. He doesn't need to prove himself to anybody. He's got like the most one of the most powerful dragons. He's one of the most like powerful and best riders. Yeah, totally. Forbidden romance? Not, not really. Reluctant allies to lovers? Maybe.
no, I suppose but that's only when they get to the threshing and
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. It's not enemies to lovers. Do not read this if you want proper enemies to lovers. It's not what this book is.
no, no, it is not. All right. Well, we're stuck on the negative. Do you want to move to ick of the
Um,
week?
yeah, let's just keep it really, really negative with that.
Tell us your ick of the week.
I think you know it. It's the use of the nickname violence. I absolutely hated it. Every time I read it, my eye twitched. I just did not like it. If that's the height of your banter, if that, as we like to say in Scotland, if that's your patters, Aiden, no, it ain't happening.
It wasn't so much an ick for me. It just didn't make any sense. She specifically avoided violence because she was poisoning people. Like when what she didn't kill anyone until like
Anyone?
75% through.
No.
Like,
I don't know if it was just violet violence sounds a bit similar. Like,
and she
okay,
threw a knife at him. Like, oh,
so violent. Ugh, yeah, I didn't like it. And I also didn't like when the two dragons were like mating or like having a moment and then it made her like horned up. I was just like, oh God, what a weird way of getting them together. Is this supposed to be a turn on for me? Because it's not.
what I thought was so strange is the bit where she sees Liam, and in my head I was like, "Fuck Liam, do it." That would be like, surely if you're horny,
That would be more in, yes, that would matter. That would make more sense to me.
but no, you wait until you can track down Xaden in this really obscure place that he's in to then
I
be like,
know.
"Oh, I'm gonna climb him like a tree." How many times is that used? More than it should have been.
More than it should have been. More than it should have been. I also really like the kind of clunky way at the end of that sort of thing where the dragons are no longer influencing them, but Rebecca just wants to make sure that you know she still feels horny towards Satan. You're like, I'm not surprised by that. You don't have to make that so overt. I've got it. I've
Yeah.
got it. She's mentioned how much she finds him attractive about 4 times a chapter by this point.
Yeah, no, just that. Yeah, the whole thing was just weird. I think that lends us into quite nicely into talking about the sex scenes. They are very open door. They are fairly graphic.
Mm.
For me, they're not very memorable.
No, I mean the first sex scene where she like her powers erupt from her when she's having an orgasm. I was just like, oh God. And the whole room was getting destroyed. Like desks were getting thrown around and beds were getting
If she's so breakable
hmm
and her body is so fragile, surely
mm.
being crushed into an armoire and that armoire fucking cracking apart and breaking into bits would also result in a broken arm for her or something.
Yeah, and I think what Rebecca was trying to do was that Violet was saying to him, "No, I want you to just go for it. Don't hold back." And like he was like, "No, I don't want to hurt you and like I want to make sure you consent." And I think as readers we were meant to be like, "Yeah, he's giving her what she wants." But it just felt I hated the scene where they were destroying the room. It was just annoying. It just annoyed me.
How would she just like, because then we basically go on this thing where like they keep it secret that they've gotten together. How does she
Mm-hmm.
explain to anyone, I don't know, the maid, the cleaner, whoever, that she needs new furniture? Oh, powers are up to, oh, but there's no scorch marks, so these are
Yeah.
sort of smashed together as if someone's just fucking thrown shit about.
Yeah,
And
I think there is a little token effort by Rebecca to say that Xaden was helping her tidy her room. I'm like, what, tidy her room? What, rebuild her desk? Like, what are you going to do? The place is destroyed.
it's not bad to have sex in the bed.
No, they have sex on the floor, don't they?
They have sex
Uh,
everywhere but the bed, Amy. This is why the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right. They do. Yeah, the desk, the armor. Yeah, they do.
It's just
Yeah.
not bad to just like it doesn't make your sex scene any more interesting. Oh, he just has to have her
No.
now. From what I can gather, and from my uni rooms, I don't know about yours, they were fucking tiny. The bed took up most of the room. So, like, if anything, you're taking more thought to fuck everywhere but the bed.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you said it there, and I totally agree. It's like, what can we do that's shocking, that's different? Where can we have sex that's not a bed? By this point, you might as well have sex in the bed because you will be the exception then, as opposed to the rule. Because everybody's fucking everywhere except the bed. It also falls into that trap for me that once they admit their feelings for one another and they've had sex, we then get that kind of thing where they kind of repeatedly have sex, or like not repeat. It's not as bad as some books have been that I've read before, but
Mm.
it becomes like, oh, the next scene they're together, they're going to have sex, and you're like, but they don't have a relationship yet. They don't have any connection yet.
No, they literally don't. For me, it's at least academic unknowns to lusters.
Hmm
I cannot give them any sort of love status because they clearly don't
Mm.
love each other. Like we're supposed to believe that they have any sort of deeper conversation. Oh, the mystical bond isn't helping that already, that their lust for each,
hmm
because apparently it's insta lust from him because he sees her the moment she comes up to the parapet and he's like, "Oh, you were so gorgeous, so perfect, so beautiful."
Would
Okay.
she have been, she'd have been shitting herself? Would she have been really attractive on the parapet when she was almost going to fall to her death? I feel like you wouldn't be in your best light at that point.
Yeah. But
No love between the two, and I'm sick of reading about that. I'm sick of reading about like as soon as they have sex, they're like a couple and they're in love, and the next scene we get with them is like the I love you scene, and it's like, what do you love about each other? What do you possibly even know about each other to love?
yeah, I mean, I kind of sort of I found it a little believable that she was like, obviously I'm starting to get feelings, and I sort of respected the character for being, if you're not gonna
Me
not gonna
too.
tell me that you're gonna have feelings, that's fine, but we ain't doing this anymore.
Yeah, I like that, and that's quite rare. So I do like that. Usually, it's like we'll just shelve those concerns, and we'll just keep having sex. Like I like the change up with that one. I don't actually know though. I'm saying that now, and I could be being completely unfair. I don't know if there was an "I love you" scene in this book. Did they say "I love you"?
Yes, think I think they did. I mean, at least definitely from her. She says to him, "I love you."
Oh, it's when it turns to his perspective on the final chapter. He talks about "you still love me," and she does say in chapter 36, "I hate that I still love you,"
Mm.
and he says, "I can live with that." So yeah, okay.
I don't really know.
They don't need to love each other by the end of the first book, by the way. I just think in books right now, if you're going to do a series, then make the love part come later. That's okay. You can have sex with someone and not love them yet.
Yeah,
That's all right.
you can also care for someone and trust them, and without that love, it doesn't need to be there. Like,
No,
I
no.
also think in the past when I was about going about town, sowing my wild oats, I had to have an emotional connection for sex to be worth anything for me. And I feel like that's what she was kind of doing here, of like, oh, I have feelings for you,
Yeah,
but we're not gonna have sex unless, yeah. It was such a, I don't
I
know.
don't mind that. I think her right to choose that is fine. If she doesn't want to have sex with someone because there's no more than just sex, then I totally and utterly respect that. What I'd like to see more in writing is for authors to be a bit braver and not fall into the same pattern of they have sex and then a couple of chapters later they admit they love one another. They don't have to tell each other they love each other
Yeah,
just because they've had sex. They could build a relationship on something deeper than sex first, and then they could say I love you. I just feel like, do we have to have those archetypes of, well, you have sex because you love someone? Well, some people don't. We don't, it doesn't need to be that way in that order necessarily. And if you want to do like a slow burn, do a bloody slow burn.
that's it. You were saying you're sick of reading enemies to lovers that don't add up. I'm sick of reading slow burns that give us the thing at the end, like at 60% or
Mhm.
whatever. A true slow burn where, not powerless level, because that was shit, where you've got the tension, you've got the thing, and then there's that release. But it doesn't have to be a sex release. It can be a kiss. It can be a confession in touches, and
Can
that's
be a
what.
touch. Yeah, totally. It's so hot. I love those kind of scenes. It can just be something like a passing comment, anything that's like that little nugget that you give the reader, and we're like, give me more. That's what we want.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh dear. I feel like we've done it again.
Final thoughts.
Okay, so is it worth your time? I'm going to say no.
Okay. Okay.
And everyone's going to turn off this podcast instantly. And that's okay. And you can leave a comment if you disagree with me, but I stand by it. I don't think this is all that great. And I think I'm sure Liv's going to tell you some other fantastic dragon books you could read if that's what you're interested in. But in terms of how much is saturating the market right now of fantasy romance, you could read other books.
I agree with everything you're saying there. I'm gonna say it is worth your time.
Okay. Why?
I think because you have to read the book to have the opinion. I'm not saying it's worth anyone's time necessarily if they're a seasoned fantasy reader and they want to read something really good and high fantasy about dragons. No, not worth your time then. As we've spoken about, as a gateway to fantasy, it's definitely worth your time. If you want something easy to read and sort of fun and something not really that serious, then yeah, it's worth your time.
Fair. But you did allude to there being other books. Maybe not. I'm not going to use the word better because I feel like I've already upset a lot of people by saying no, but I stand by it. So tell us, Liv, what could people read if they are looking for something with dragons, but maybe as well as this or instead of this?
I would say epic fantasy. You're looking at the Ballad of Sir Benfro, and that the first book in that series is called Dreamwalker by J.D. Oswald. You follow a little. a little dragon called Ben Fro, and you follow a young boy, and it's a 5 book series. It's beautiful. It's really high fantasy, dragons galore. It's super, super great. Something a bit more out there would be Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon Ha Lee. It's just so fucking good. The world building is just mwah. Character is, I'm going to say non-binary. They, them. One of my favorite reads is Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I feel like it's probably okay for me to say that I do know L personally. Like we um have a somewhat friendship, but this is not a plug for them or in any way other than to be like this book is awesome. It's so slow burn, it's queer, the world building's fantastic. If you wanted to read Fourth Wing because you were interested in the way it's written because it's unique, apparently, this is actually unique. This is written as if it's a letter to someone in certain POVs, two shifting POVs, almost as if it's written after the fact. I don't know how to describe it. I know that it's like second person something. It's fucking
Yeah.
great. And the second,
Proper unique writing.
second time,
Deliberately unique.
yeah. And the last one is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Dragons, sapphic, banger. And
Fantastic recommendations. Love
there's,
it.
there's so many more.
Oh, there's so many more. So many more. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you want
But you know
dragons,
what? If it gets people into Dragon School, I like that you said that. I think that's totally right in what you said. If it's a gateway for you to read more dragon books, then that can only be a good thing.
yes, exactly. 100%. Almost leaving Fourth Wing behind. Will you be reading Iron Flame to read Onyx Storm when it comes out tomorrow?
Um, I've heard it's the weakest of the two, but we've got a little bit of downtime right now because we're waiting currently for our next read to really to come out, which we've never done before, so that's exciting for us. I wouldn't say 100% categorically no. I'm interested, perhaps finding out a bit more and seeing where the relationship goes and seeing if maybe I eat my words. But if I don't get round to it, I'm not going to be heartbroken. I'm going to keep reading Trek right now and prioritize that. But I wouldn't say no to potentially picking up this series again. What about you?
I'm already 2 chapters in.
Cool. You enjoying it?
I'm not enjoying it. I feel really sad. We did it again. I've come in and I thought, actually, do you know what? Better than I thought. And then I've actually written some stuff down and I'm like, actually, is it? No.
No, I know. We do this a lot. We've done it with pretty much every book we've ever read. We bring out the worst in each other, I think. But yeah, if you disagree and you want to get involved in the conversation, leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And we know people love it. So we know that someone listening to this podcast right now has strong feelings about how much they enjoy it. So convince us. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, even if I mean, it's not your job to convince us that it's good. I'm more than happy to be like, actually, yeah, that's a good point. They
Yeah,
do
me too.
that or whatever. So yeah, 100%. Please let
Me
us know.
too.
Moving on, Amy, what are we reading next week?
Another TikTok sensation. A very different kind of book, but we are still in the romance category. However, we're off to dark romance, and we're going to be reading Lights Out by Navessa Allen. It's going to be spicy.
Is it just? Who knows? I mean, obviously we do because we've already recorded it and we've already spoken about it. But yes, yes, gonna be fun, excited. And then for a couple of weeks in February, we're gonna look at like a very contemporary, very cutesy romance. And then we've decided we're going to look at a big old monster fucking romance.
Yeah, buddy. There's so many. If you have a favourite, then tell us what it is because we
Yeah.
need recommendations. There are so many fantastically, hugely well loved books in this genre. I was completely unaware of that. There's a few that I need to run past Liv and get her thoughts on. But if you have a particular favourite monster romance, please leave it in the comment. I would love to hear it.
Otherwise, welcome back. We're hopefully will be your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about the bookish world and all those books that people say you should read.
Happy reading. Bye.